Good morning. My name is Kent, and my brother Kip gave me one of his kidneys 31 years ago. I was diagnosed with FSGS in 1983. My symptoms were pretty vague. Had high blood pressure, but had protein in my urine, but I was functioning and working. Had it not been for a referral to one of the nephrologists in San Antonio, who became a very good friend, I probably wouldn't have done as well as I've done now. I was very, very sick, and it continued to progress until I needed a transplant. Living without working kidneys is very difficult. They tried giving me large doses of steroids early on, and that made me swell up and made me pretty moody, and I didn't really have the ability to function normally. I was going to the bathroom a lot, and just generally was fatigued, tired, but yet I continued to work, and I continued to work up until I was transplanted. And I might add that my whole intent after diagnosis was to go directly for a kidney transplant. I was not wanting to go on dialysis. I chose to do a preemptive transplant. I was never really on active dialysis. I experienced one episode of dialysis prior to surgery for the transplant, and that was the intent, to see that if it would bring down a creatinine of 17. I was very sick. I was sick after the dialysis, and then my doctor and I decided that we were going to go ahead with the transplant, and I was transplanted via my brother 3 days later. I'm very fortunate to have been married to the same woman, Kathy Bressler, will be 49 years in August. And we were blessed with 2 children, and now we have 4 grandchildren. They're wonderful, but the whole process during my illness prior to the transplant was not good. It was very difficult on my family. I was not a good person to be around. My wife had to do a lot of jumping through hoops to tolerate me, and how she did it, I'll never know. But she's a remarkable woman, and to this day, I wouldn't be where I'm at had I not had her support, and my children's support, and now my grandchildren's support. I don't think that a person really understands kidney disease unless they go through it. It's horrible. In all honesty, kidney disease sucks. My nephrologist told me early on, matter of fact, right after biopsy, that I needed to have a transplant. I needed to get ready for transplant. Never once said you need to get ready for dialysis. He said you need to get ready for transplant. Do you have any brothers or any sisters or any close family members? Because we need to bring them in and test them so that we can see if we got a match for a transplant. But that was his recommendation from day one. His recommendation was, quote, not to go on dialysis, but to actively seek transplant. And that's what I did 31 years ago. I know it's difficult for people to ask for things, but in my case, I had 2 very loving brothers that were more than willing to come and donate a kidney. They knew how sick I was. They saw me, and they said, let's do this. Let's not wait. Let's get it over with so you can go on living. And that's exactly what we did. Prior to the transplant and knowing how sick I was not scared. I was not scared of undergoing surgery, number 1. But number 2, I knew that this was the only alternative I had if I wanted to live a normal life. Although transplants are not a cure, after 31 years, I would like to really understand what the next best alternative would have been. And the only thing I can think of were 2 things, either going on dialysis or dying. I chose not to do either one. I chose transplant. When my brothers came and were tested, my youngest brother was a match, and the brother next closest to me, Kip, was an even better match. And because my brother, the youngest one, had children, they decided that Kip would give me the kidney. When he told me that he was going to give me his kidney, I was so sick at the time. The only thing I really remember telling him was, I'll never forget this. I love you so much. You can't imagine how important this is to me. And he said, yes, I can, because I know you'd do it for me. Kip and I both had some questions about how it would affect him. And Kip's wife was very concerned because she didn't feel that it would be a good thing for him to give the kidney. But all in all, she said, we've got to do this. And we discussed with Dr. Mulgrew, my nephrologist, what were the effects of the transplant? What would happen to the donor? And they explained the surgery down to the T. My brother ended up having a rib and a half taken out so they could get to the kidney. But they also learned early on that his life was going to be normal. He'd lose a little bit of function in his kidney, but not any more than the normal aging process was going to have. He never had any reservations, and we were well educated, and so we weren't really scared about it. We knew we were going to do what we were going to do. We were going to do the transplant, and then we were going to take it as it came. And we really actually turned it all over to the Lord. He was in total control at that point. I had high hopes for this surgery. I knew that it was going to provide me with the opportunity to live a normal life and raise my kids and get to see my grandchildren and live to old age. And here I am. My brother was very supportive of me, as he still is. Both of them were. They told me on many occasions, I'm sure glad we did this. And the most important thing was I had my entire family around me the day of surgery, and I'll never forget that day. Back in 1987, when I received the transplant, the whole procedure was explained to both of us in detail. At that time, they were not doing laparoscopic surgery like they are now, where they go in, inflate, and go in and get the kidney and bring it out. My brother had a whole rib and one half taken out of his side so they could get to the kidney. His recovery time was very long, and he had some complications with it. He had a small infection in the incision line, but all in all, he did very well because he was healthy. And that's what you have when you have a good donor. A healthy donor means a healthy transplant experience. And believe me, I had a healthy transplant experience. The night before and prior to surgery in the morning, I don't remember a whole lot. There wasn't anything, quote, dramatic about it. My brother and I looked at each other in the morning and said, God bless you, let's say a prayer. We said a prayer. I remember that distinctly. I remember my wife giving me a kiss. They took my brother a half hour early, and I got to say goodbye to him. And all in all, that experience was tremendous because I knew at that point in time everything was going to be fine. I turned it all over and I was ready. I was ready for surgery, and so was he. We went in positive, and it came out positive. After surgery, I spent roughly 2 weeks in the hospital. At that point in time, the program was for 2 weeks. You spent a week in the hospital. I had a catheter in, a urinary tract catheter for roughly 7 days, and then I had a whole week of transition before I went home. My wife got to come in, and my kids got to come in and stay with me. And my brother Kip, on the other hand, was gone on the third day. And with that, even with that large surgery, he was discharged very quickly. He had some complications with his incision, but it was quickly rectified, and he did really well and continues to do well. Thank God. As I remember, the surgery, my surgery took roughly 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours, and my brother's was approximately the same. And as far as feeling good, I felt my creatinine was 17 when I went into surgery. 3 days after surgery, it was back to 1.1. So you can kind of probably tell how I did feel. I was up and out of bed and walking within 3 hours, even intensive care unit. I was sitting on the side of the bed, and then within 12 hours I was up and walking. And I think that's the most important thing it can take away from this, is that you need to be very active. You have this transplant for one reason, and that's to live. So as soon as you get it in, start living. As I said before in the talk, I really wasn't on scheduled dialysis. I only had one dialysis session. But I can tell you what, and I've said this before, the most important thing to me was to get a transplant, because I thought that was the best possible thing for me at the time. And today I'm very happy I did what I did, and I would do it over again. A transplant doesn't cure anything, especially FSGS, but it sure does give you a better alternative than I think dialysis does. Some people have to have dialysis. I understand that, but it wasn't for me. And I'm so grateful that my brother's kidney was a great match. And I have to admit, I've taken good care of myself. So I'm proud of where I'm at after 31 years. Since I had the transplant, I've had my normal aging particulars. For instance, I had a stent put in my heart. I also had an aneurysm in my aorta that had to be repaired. So life goes on. When you have a transplant, it doesn't mean that you're off the hook for other health anomalies or incidents. The whole thing is that when you've had a transplant, you can do the things you need to do to stay healthy. And you don't have anything to worry about except taking your medicine, going to see the doctor, and in general, taking care of yourself. If you can't take care of yourself, you're not taking care of your kidney. So I think that in itself is the most important thing. And to be feeling good, you have to be working out, and you need to be active. And that's what I've done, and I think it's paid off, and praise God for that. My brother, Kip, is near and dear to me, as is my younger brother, Kerry. He was very adamant about wanting to give the kidney, but it worked out better with Kip's kidney. But I love them both, and they love me dearly, and we have had a very close relationship. I don't think there's anything better to have than a close relationship with a sister or a brother who gave you a kidney. There's no feeling that can be explained in this. It's true deep love, and although you may not say it all the time, it's in your heart. And what's in your heart makes you well. My most favorite part of this whole journey since the transplant is walking into a room of patients who are looking for donors or who are going to undergo transplant or are on dialysis, and I get introduced, or I introduce myself as a fellow who had a transplant 31 years ago. That in itself allows individuals to think, wow, 31 years, that is great. If he can do it, I can do it. And I stand ready to help him in any way I can. I pay back by paying forward. I'm very interested in helping others learn about donation, learn about donating, and learning about transplant and aftercare and transplants. This whole process in my life has been an experience. I can think of several things that are important to me, but that's the most important, is showing people that it can happen, and it can happen just with great ease, actually. I want to thank my brother Kip and my brother Kerry, my wife, my kids, my parents who are now gone, and everybody who has supported me in this past 31 years. I have been alive because of a transplant and because of the great care of nephrologists. I can't name all the people that I appreciate and I'm grateful for. And I'm humbled by an experience to be able to talk to you in a short vignette about my life, but I do want to express to you how much I do love my family. And thank you so much for being around me and being with me through this whole process. The best advice I can give you if you have kidney disease and you're actively working towards renal failure is to seek transplant as early as you can. Preemptive transplant allows you the good life. It gives you a chance to avoid dialysis. If all goes well, you'll live a happy and active life, and you can raise your family, you can work, you can do the good things that you want to do with life. Seek out people that can help you find a donor. For instance, there's a group called kidneysolutions.org in Texas, but you can go to kidneysolutions.org and they'll help you find a donor. They'll help you through the transplant process, and they'll also help you post-transplant. And the good thing about it, there's no charge. I'm part of that program, and I'd be willing to help you any way I can. And thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. God bless.